One of the most important paradigms that is going to be coming out in the near future is mobile protection.
The whole world's moving more and more to a mobile platform. If you have social media on your phone, your device is compromised.
MDM has fundamentally changed, at least in the mobile space. I don't see a lot of people doing that today. Is that the case?
They have this new thing called MAM, which is Mobile Application Management. If you're trying to control a device, especially like with MAM, you're trying to say you're controlling a container of data on an edge device, and you think that's sufficient. You really think your data is safe?
What's going on, Hacker Valley fam? Welcome back to the show. It's your host, Ron Eddings, and I want you to think about everything that's on your mobile phone right now. Think about your multi-factor authentication codes, payments like Apple Pay and Google Pay, and even more pressing and secretive, your messages. Now ask yourself, if you were to lose your phone in the back of an Uber, or even worse, your company, their mobile security gets popped, what's your plan? Our guest today went from homeless high school dropout to Army infantry to founder of a company that's rethinking the edge entirely. This is someone that has lost their phone in the back of a cab while traveling overseas 20 minutes before they were supposed to meet with the Ministry of Defense, and it did not slow them down. Now, how is that possible? All that and more, but first, roll the intro.
Who says tech can't be human?
Before we start, here are 3 things I've been watching from this past month that sets the table for today's episode. It's time to hack the headlines. Number 1, the Pentagon hit pause on CMMC. On July 13th, the DoD suspended the Phase 2 third-party assessment requirement as part of CMMC. This is the entire thing that government service providers have been nervous and racing towards since November. And now they've brought in a new task force and they get 60 days to review the whole program. So why'd they do it? The Department of War CIO, the Honorable Kirsten Davies, looked at how small businesses are about to be facing huge compliance bills that can reach up to $600,000. And imagine this, Hacker Valley is a company providing the US government with unique capabilities. And in order to retain my contract, I need to spend $600,000 on another business's services. Here's the exact words that Kirsten gave. The math simply doesn't math. And I don't think she's wrong at all. Even the Small Business Administration, they backed this pause. So here's what this means for you. If you're anywhere near a defense contract, the audits pause, but the rules are not necessarily too much different. You still have to look at NIST 800-171, and your self-assessments, they're still mandatory and they're still enforceable. Self-assessments, they're not as good as third-party assessments, I'll say, but they're still really good for the Department of War and even companies because someone has to put their word on the line. Headline number 2, the edge is under active attack. SonicWall, they put out an advisory on July 14th, confirming 2 vulnerabilities in their secure mobile access VPN appliances, and these vulnerabilities were being exploited in the wild. One of them was a perfect 10.0 CVSS score, and that's due to the nature of the vulnerability. Nature's like unauthenticated remote root access. That's absolutely dreadful and terrible. Then on Friday, July 18th, researchers at Vulnerabilities, they dropped the story. They said a threat actor that they were calling UTA 0533 had been chaining these vulnerabilities and flaws as a 0 day since June 22nd. That's weeks before patches existed. There was no way to work around this. They implanted custom malware inside of legitimate SonicWall processes that survived reboots, and they hid behind fake error pages. And all while this is going on, they were secretly and quietly capturing credentials right off the wire. Why does this keep happening on edge devices? It's because that's where all the leverage is. You don't need to hack into a network and do crazy acts if you can get a VPN appliance, because that means all of the authenticated sessions that are going through that appliance. You can collect the credentials, the keys of employees real time without any extra work. So what does this mean for you? If you run a SonicWall appliance, you're probably patching and hunting indicators this past weekend, this weekend, and into future weekends. Rotating every credential is going to be a good look, but if you zoom out, the thing that brought you security and remote access is the thing that gave the adversary access. It's a pattern, and my guest has a radical answer to this pattern, and it's to stop defending the edge. Take it off the books entirely. Finally, number 3, a naval defense contractor is bleeding secrets right now. A ransomware crew that calls themselves the Gentlemen just listed a major marine system as one of their biggest targets, and they listed their credentials and information on the dark web. They claim that they stole over a terabyte of data, and the proof that they posted was technical manuals for underwater mine disposal drones. The unit that got hit, allegedly, they work for the US military. And that's what the organization that got hacked said. They're known as ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems, also known as TKMS. TKMS says that the target that got hit was someone that works for the US military. They claim that the breach was in an environment that was isolated, and all the claims that are out there are exaggerated. So who are the Gentlemen? They are a newcomer in the ransomware space. They actually came from another ransomware gang. And all of this matters is because it's not the Navy that got hacked. It's not the Pentagon that got hacked. It's the company that's building technology for the Department of War and the US military. So if you're a contractor, if you're a subcontractor or a supplier, you are unfortunately the target because you also hold some of the most important crown jewels, but with a fraction of the defense budget. So when you look at all of this, we paused the audit when it comes to CMMC, the third-party audit, and all of a sudden, someone just had their supply chain ravaged. These 3 stories have one thread that our guest for today's episode actually built his entire company around, and he's right in the center of it. So without further ado, let's get to the interview. My special guest and the presenting company is Jared Shepard, who is the founder and CEO of Hypori. Hypori was built by Jared and his incredible team to solve this problem of scale, of intelligence and protection. And Jared, I'm so excited to have you on, especially riding on the backs of what was just released about this CMMC 2.0 pullback of third-party assessments of your protection, your safeguards. But most importantly, Jared, welcome to the show.
Well, I hope I can live up to that hype, man. That's no, I really appreciate it. I'm excited to get the chance to kind of talk to you. So
when we first met, you said something that really stuck out to me that I hope people and builders and founders take, very personally, that you said you had 2 companies. You had a services company and you purchased a product company that ultimately became Hypori. And they were going to kill each other if you didn't separate them. And I immediately had this vision of beta fish. You put 2 beta fish in a small body of water, they will go after each other. And I know that a lot of companies are so tempted to have a product and then build services, or have services and then build a product. And you said that is not going to work here. Tell us a little bit about that.
yeah, I mean, there are some companies that can pull it off, and I would tell you the only way you can really do it is you have to have a rigid discipline around the separation between those 2 different functions, because they're diametrically opposed. I mean, if you think about a professional services company, it survives on low overhead so it can have the most competitive wrap rate to deliver the best possible service at the lowest cost. A product company is the opposite, right? It lives on overhead. It builds everything first and then hopes to sell it to you once they've actually proven that the capability works and it can scale. Those 2 things are at odds with each other, and they will ultimately eat each other up if you allow them to. And I thought originally I could be a CEO of both and give myself to both in the same level of commitment. And I was wrong. And I almost killed both in the process. And so I made the decision especially when I really embraced what I knew Hypori could become. I realized how big it could become. I made the decision to spin it out, and I took Hypori, and I ended up hiring a CEO to run my professional services company, which is still around and doing great things today.
Amazing. Tell us a little bit about Hypori, because like I was mentioning in the very beginning, I went through this crazy setup late last year to try to bring mobilization to my desktop. And then I realized, oh, I don't have it for my mobile device. If I lose it or if I get hacked, that's a wrap for me.
Yeah, I mean, so one is we could have a great conversation about whether I think even desktops will be around in the next 10 years or so, because I think the whole world's moving more and more to a mobile platform. Even like Macintosh itself, Macintosh. It shows you how old I am. Apple is essentially said, the Mac OS is going to be largely moved towards a hybrid version of the iOS model, right? So, mobility is going to become the key way in which everybody interacts with data. So, with Hypori, the idea of Hypori originally when we built it was for this really difficult, very bespoke, very unique use case, which was like, hey, can you allow a group of government employees to go to a place that maybe they're not even supposed to be, buy a cell phone off of a host nation market, knowing that that cell phone is probably compromised, think like Huawei or other, on a network that is probably compromised, think the same problem set, and still be able to securely communicate in a way in which doesn't compromise data or get anybody arrested or dragged into the street, right? Um, and we were able to build a solution that solved that problem. But my epiphany is like, man, if we can do it in this really hard, very bespoke, very unique, aggressive environment, we could do BYOD. Like, why wouldn't we be able to empower an employee to access a secure enterprise in a way in which the data from the secure enterprise never leaves? There's no data in transit and no data at rest. It's only just ultimately change pixels. I can interact with that data as if I was in possession of it, but not be in a position in which I could ever lose the data or compromise the data, to include if I lose my phone, to your earlier point, or if I have some kind of, malware, or if my device is compromised, which, by the way, like, if you have social media on your phone, your device is compromised. So it's just like, it's just whether or not it's compromised by a nation state actor or by a shareholder owned corporation of some kind that you chose accept when you signed off on that user agreement.
I love working with our sponsors like Hypori because they make you ask yourself the hard questions. So I wanted to ask you, our audience, a question. What if the biggest problem in mobile security isn't about how we protect devices, but it's the fact that we keep putting sensitive data on them in the first place? That's exactly what my guest Jared Shepard has been challenging for years. After serving in the Army and building multiple technology companies, he founded Hypori around one simple idea. If enterprise data never leaves the enterprise, then attackers, they have nothing to steal. Instead of managing or locking down your personal devices, Hypori keeps corporate data inside the enterprise and securely streams the workspace to whatever device that you're using. That means stronger security, better privacy for employees, and a completely different way to think about secure mobility. One device, zero worries. You can visit hypori.com to learn more. Now let's get back to the conversation with Jared about why the assumptions behind mobile security may already be outdated. Thank you, Hypori, for sponsoring this episode. When I think about the technology that you all have brought out, the first idea that comes to mind is executive protection. And that was a big piece of 2025. I know a lot of companies were spinning up, and a lot of specialists, security specialists, were really getting paid exceptionally well by protecting executives. So I can imagine that that's one of those big use cases for you all. What are some of the other use cases that like cybersecurity practitioners, CISOs really care about when it comes to the tech that you've been working on?
So, I mean, you hit it on the head. I mean, that was actually our first like real traction outside of the government that we got, which was, a top 5 bank, hey, we need to give this capability to all of our traveling executives because, like regardless of what you think your home security posture is, when you start to travel internationally, especially when you get into Asia or Eastern Europe or into Africa, et cetera, you're on a most likely compromised infrastructure of some kind. And so of course the first use case that people really started to embrace Hypori for in the commercial world was executive protection, right? Board members, C-level executives, etc. But then when it started to scale, when people started to look at it, like for instance, UBS Credit Suisse, they invested in us and are now, using us. The reason why they looked at us, we thought it was going to be like, hey, this is it's because of how secure we are, right? Like, and they were like, no, that's kind of table stakes. Like everything has to be secure if we're going to even consider it. But you actually solve a different problem for us, and it was a problem we hadn't even considered at the time, which is data sovereignty. And they're like, in Europe, there's all these data sovereignty laws about how you can move data, privacy rules, who can be in possession of data at any given time. You don't move data anywhere. Data stays in the enterprise. You can enable a traveling individual, employee, executive, whoever it happens to be, to interact with data as if they were in possession of it, but never actually be in possession of the data.
Something that people used to talk about a lot, and I haven't been a part of this world for a while, so I would love to get a little refresher from you, but is MDM. Like back in 2010, when I worked at McAfee, they were pushing MDM products so hard, and like it required me to give someone else administrator privileges on my own phone, which felt dirty, but in order to check my work email, you had to do it. And I think that MDM has fundamentally changed, at least in the mobile space. Like I don't see a lot of people doing that today. Is that the case? And also, how does Hypori differ from like that paradigm?
Yeah, so we're night and day. It's I often say, like, look, we're not Chevy selling against Ford. I'm not trying to convince you why my truck engine or my interior is better than your truck engine or your truck interior. We're much more kind of like Tesla selling against Chevy or Ford. Yeah, we have four doors and four wheels, but that's about where the similarities end. The we are a different way in which to approach mobile access to data. MDM is exactly what the acronym stands for. It's mobile device management. It's an inventory management platform, right? It's designed to manage edge devices. And if you want to manage your employees' personal phones and be exposed to all the liabilities and the things that incurs, then you use MDM. Um, what's happened is MDM has evolved, and now they have this new thing called MAM, which is mobile application management. And so they made this decision that they've gotten a lot of privacy pushback, and people largely don't want MDM on their phone anymore for the same reasons why you didn't. And so the MDM vendors came up with this thing called MAM, which is ultimately, well, instead of managing the whole device, we'll manage a container on the device that's encrypted, and that's where we'll protect and store all this information. And we'll somehow keep this protected container safe from everything else on the device. Um, that's fundamentally different than the way that we look at the problem, which is nothing should ever be on the device that you don't want potentially exposed to compromise, because the only way that you can actually protect that information set is with visibility and control, right? The only way you can protect data, even if it's in an encrypted container, is with visibility and control. If I use MAM, I have to also put endpoint protection on it, which means I have to put an antivirus on it. That antivirus can see every website you go to. It can have a full inventory of your device. Otherwise, it can't fundamentally do its job. In a MAM setting, when people say, well, it's an encrypted container, that's good enough. Well, except for the fact that a processor can't use encrypted data. It has to be decrypted for it to be used. So the first step in that is it decrypts the data so that it can actually be manipulated. If that edge device is compromised, then your data's gone too. So the idea of controlling on the edge is in itself fundamentally antiquated, unless you're actually trying to manage corporate-owned devices. If it's a corporate-owned device, then yeah, you should probably have an inventory management software on it that's protecting that corporate managed device.
So there's this concept of shadow AI, and it's no secret that that's going on. I mean, it's probably happening even in my company, your company. And I would imagine that the at best, when it comes to shadow AI, someone might be able to take a screenshot and then try to like put that into Chat GPT or their favorite AI tool. Like how does Hypori fit into this new world of shadow AI that we're living in?
So for one, I mean, we exist largely because of shadow AI, right? We have to give an alternative to it, but you can't screen capture our place, right? Our capability. You could, I guess, and I always get this question. Well, what if I take a second phone and take a picture of the first phone, and then I'm like, well, then you have an insider threat problem, right? That's not a technology problem, but you can't screen capture Hypori, you can't do that kind of a thing. But shadow IT is a very real problem, and it speaks back to that problem set of habits. If your security mechanism is so prohibitive that people won't use it, then it's worthless. And ultimately people will always then go back to what their habits have made them comfortable with. They're going to use Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp or Signal or even if it's not authorized, not regulated, not, it doesn't meet any of those requirements. People, if you don't give them a viable mechanism in which they can safely communicate that doesn't compromise their own personal, privacy, their own personal safety, their own comfort level, if you don't give them a mechanism to do that, they'll find their own, right? And then corporations, enterprises, governments, you end up living with the secondary impact.
Mm-hmm. So my company, we use things like Google Drive. We have some network attached storage as well. Would that live behind Hypori? Like, how would I go about accessing those resources?
Yeah, I mean, there's some great corporate cloud capabilities that are out there, whether it's Google or Microsoft or name the vendor. There's some cool stuff that's out there. That's the infrastructure protection side of the house, right? But if you allow an edge device to actually be in possession of the document, like the minute I open a Word document or a DocX document or open an Excel document or start to interact with data on that edge device, you're now actually exposed to everything on that edge device, right? And to include potential data loss. So fundamentally what we're doing is we're collapsing the attack surface. If you think about how complex the attack surface is today, we're collapsing the attack surface and we're taking this and your tablet and maybe even your laptop off of the attack surface. And when you have to think about this as a practitioner in what you're defending on the edge, right? So I want to defend my enterprise and I want to use secure enterprise capabilities like Google Drive or Microsoft Azure, O365, or whatever that enterprise capability is. But I also want to mitigate the risk when I ask an employee to interact with it from an edge device. And that's what Hypori is focused on is changing the way that the edge is actually looked at.
Mm-hmm. There's a version of this problem that employees, they cause on purpose because, they're using their personal devices. But with what you're saying, like, open it up. Like, let's bring BYOD back. You don't have to buy a lot of companies I used to work with. I used to work in the source space. They used to have to buy me laptops and then they'd have to like figure out a way to manage it. And I'm using it at my work office. So like that is creating a whole nother can of worms. You're saying open up those floodgates, but just secure the way that we're viewing that data. And that's by putting it on a different access point.
Absolutely. I mean, so like look at it, like my personal phone. I have 6 other phones on my personal phone, and these are 6 different environments. That includes, I have 2 different Department of Defense networks I can access from my phone. I'm not in possession of any of that data. That data never actually leaves those environments, but I can communicate in my customer's desired environment inside of their security perimeter in a way in which doesn't introduce additional exposure. But like, think about a bigger picture. Like, okay, so this is a cloud-based operating system that operates within a secure enterprise. So if I show you Hypori and I was to launch Hypori and I show you Outlook and Teams and Slack and all the stuff that I do inside of Hypori, it looks like a mobile device or a mobile operating system, an iPad or an Android or whatever it happens to be. But then it's my favorite parlor trick. Okay, I'm on 4 bars of 4G. So how much bandwidth do you think I can get? And I click speed test. Right. And people always guess. They're like, I don't know, 30 megs, 50 megs, 100 megs. It doesn't matter. They get it wrong. It's in a cloud. It runs at the speed of a data center. I pull like 4 gigabits of bandwidth, right? Because it's running on a data center backend, on data center processors, with data center RAM, with data center memory. So that means I can make a faster mobile device than you could ever pack into this form factor. So now, what if what I'm saying is, what if we could make a faster PC than you could buy from Best Buy, that you could access from your 80-inch TV on the wall with a wireless keyboard and mouse, and do it all for $15 a month? Now you're talking about actually changing the way the edge works.
I hope anyone that's watching this would say amen, because that's already what we're doing essentially when it comes to, especially the iOS users with the iCloud. You're paying $10 to probably $25 a month just to maintain that backup of your information. But with this, you don't have to actually put that information on your phone. There's no risk of losing that phone and then losing that data.
Hypori is really important because we fundamentally challenge the idea of how you secure information, right? rather than having to encrypt data and store it on an edge device and lock that edge device down and protect that edge device, and then as such compromise people's privacy, their convenience, their ability to do the job, our theory is don't transit the data, don't store the data on the edge, protect your enterprise, and allow untrusted devices to interact with information, not be in possession of information. Right? When you look at like the Defense Industrial Base and the DOW CIO, she just put a 60-day suspension on CMMC. People, I've been bombarded with notes, and they go, "Oh my gosh, does this mean CMMC is going away?" No, but I mean, what it does mean is that DFARS is still in effect. CUI protection requirements are still in effect. NIST standards 800-171 are still in effect. The difference is what she suspended was your company no longer, at least for the time being, for the next 60 days while they evaluate this, doesn't have to have a third-party independent verification. And so why is that important? Does that relieve a significant amount of stress from corporate America? I would argue it doesn't, because before, when you have a third-party auditor, verify that you are actually secure, if something happens, you could point to that third-party auditor and go, "But they said I was good." Now you have to self-attest. And in self-attesting, when you say that you're secure, if somebody in your team doesn't believe you are, they think that you misrepresented the truth, and they file a False Claims Act investigation against you, you are now financially exposed if that information was misrepresented. And so maybe now more than ever, how you store CUI, where you store CUI, and whether or not you allow edge devices to interact with it is more important.
For anyone that hasn't been in the government or DoD space, CUI is classified and unclassified information, right? Or confidential and unclassified information.
Yes. Yeah. Confidential, confidential, unclassified information. Yeah.
You're going to get an external party to then say, "I looked at your controls. You actually do have them in place." But you're saying that's been put on pause.
Yeah, so there's levels of CMMC compliance, and if you're going to go work for the Department of Defense, you had to, especially if you were going to handle CUI in any way, shape, or form. I think it was level 2. You had to go get an independent auditor to come and validate that you actually have the appropriate controls in place. It's just now, how do you, from an attestation standpoint, do you have an independent validator come and say that you've done what you're supposed to do, thus you remove liability? Or do you now have to take on full liability and say it yourself and hope that you're right?
What does that do when it comes to liability? Does that remove the liability from the provider? Like, does that lessen it if there is a lawsuit of some sort? What is the value of doing it now that there is a 60-day extension?
Look, I'm no lawyer, but I will tell you that, DFARS, NIST 800-171, those things are all unchanged, right? So what you lost, or at least what has been temporarily suspended, is the third-party validation that you've done all the work that was necessary to protect that information in accordance with those regulations and policies. Now that you don't have that third-party attestation, it's just you saying that you did. And if somebody files an FCA, a False Claims Act investigation, and Department of Justice comes in and looks at it and goes, "Actually, no, you didn't. And you never did. I mean, your people may have told you that you did, but you never actually did. And here's the controls that you failed to meet across the board." They're also going to fine the living crap out of you, right? In the tune of millions of dollars. I think last year, before this has even come into place, the FCAs have already found, I think, over $52 million worth of False Claims Act fines in companies that have misrepresented their CMMC status, right? Their cybersecurity status. So I don't know if this is a blessing or a curse to defense industrial base customers, but I do know that reducing your CUI boundary, where you store CUI and how you transmit CUI, is maybe now more important than it was just 24 hours ago, because your exposure may have just gone up.
Underneath all of this, and what I'm hearing from you is like why this is a bad thing, why doing the attestation is a good thing for you, and not just you, but like me doing it is because it's doing the right thing. It's showing that I have done the right thing. It's taking some level of opinion and auditing and governance and saying like, yes, I'm making sure that I'm doing the right thing for my country.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm no C3PAO. I don't make any money on CMMC. That's not my thing. So, but I will tell you that, like, look at what China's done in the last decade, 2 decades. Like, look at the technology that they've come out with, and now you tell me how much of that did they actually invent versus how much of it did they steal? If you look at their version of the Joint Strike Fighter, it's amazing. It looks just like ours. Why? Was it because they hacked the Department of Defense network? No. It was because they hacked the Defense Industrial Base manufacturers network and got the plans, right? You don't think the same thing's not happening with AI, with quantum, with everything that really helps define America and our allies and ensure that we maintain superiority to ensure freedom across the world, right? That comes from the manufacturing of technology. People forget Silicon Valley was created by the Department of Defense, right? Silicon Valley started in an effort to support the Department of Defense post-nuclear era into the space race. Like, the idea of technical innovation isn't just about using it for wartime, like attacking people. It's about protecting what we hold sovereign. It's about protecting the things that we think are important. It's about protecting our technology edge that employs America, that employs our friendly nations, that provides for all the things that we enjoy every day. And if those things are simply stripped from us, then we find ourselves in a place in which we are technology equals, but not manufacturing equals, not freedom equals, right? The people of China don't enjoy the same freedoms, privileges, rights, benefits, etc. So why is their labor so cheap compared to ours? Well, listen to what I just said. They don't enjoy those same things. And if an organization like that can use our technology to accomplish their outcomes, the world is not going to be a better place for it. Like, if you look at Anthropic's Mythos and what Mythos has done, Mythos has demonstrated its ability to change the attack platform, the zero-day exploitation capability of an edge device from, like, you remember Patch Tuesdays and, once a month patching, right? Now patching is going to have to be done in minutes, maybe hours at best, because of platforms like Mythos. And Anthropic was at least, responsible enough to not release it to the world without warning, right? They closed it down. They did Glasswing. They let very unique companies and government participate to see just simply how exposed they actually are to all these legacy systems that are out there that are everywhere, right? China's not going to offer the same thing. They already have come out with what they're claiming is a peer to Mythos. And if they haven't yet, they will in the next couple of weeks or months, right? Have that near peer capability. And if you think they're going to hold back on going after absolutely everything they can, you're mistaken.
No. And even when DeepSeek first came out, it was pretty apparent and known that it was through distillation tactics. So probably a little bit of stealing confidential information, but also stealing the outputs. The outputs are sometimes just as sensitive as the things that you input into your systems.
I mean, that's one of those things when you're thinking about, like we talked about earlier, MDM and MAM. Okay, if you're trying to control a device, especially like with MAM, you're trying to say you're controlling a container of data on an edge device, and you think that's sufficient, but you have no visibility or ability to control your employee from downloading something like DeepSeek. You really think your data is safe?
Come on. Wow. All right. This is amazing. I love these types of conversations because, one, they're not self-serving, and two, anyone that takes a little page out of this book, you're going to be a little bit better. You might even get a few more customers because having that CMMC level 2, especially with the external audit, it's impressive. It's like it's like having a pen test and saying, I have the records of showing that someone has at least taken a look at it and we're taking this problem seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a contractual standpoint, it'll still become a differentiator because you're still gonna have to demonstrate why you've gone above and beyond against your peers. And that's a methodology I think that will continue to be used. But to the point about self-serving, like, could you make the argument that what I'm talking about is self-serving for Hypori? Yeah, maybe to some degree, but if you wonder why I'm so passionate about it, it's because my passion is for our country, is for where I came from, is for what we do. Our nation would be better if we're just better as a nation, right? And whether that benefits Hypori or not, whether that benefits our nation's, veterans or not, it doesn't matter. Like, because if it benefits all of us, then it benefits all of us. And that's what we really have to continuously work at, especially as experts and practitioners in the security space.
It's 100% not self-serving. I appreciate all the things that you do, but what is self-serving is telling people how they can learn more about Hypori. So what is the best way for the audience and our community to learn more?
Sure. So, I mean, the easiest way is go to hypori.com, right? HYPORI. We have a whole bunch of great information out there. Click contact us, reach out to us. I'm an easy guy to find. If you can't tell, I'm passionate. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Look, I didn't get here, and none of my team got here without other people's help, without other people mentoring. So, we are always receptive. We're always receptive to people reaching out with ideas, thoughts, like let's collaborate together. Let's make things better. I'm looking forward to meeting any of you who are interested in learning more.
Love it. Jared, I appreciate everything that you're doing. I'm wishing you and the Hypori team nothing but the best. We definitely got to do it again. And with that, we will see everyone next time. All right, I want to close the loop on one of those 3 headlines that we covered at the top of the show, and it's the pause on CMMC. Starting with the reframe that Jared gave us. The reframe is, well, we blame the auditor. The auditor is constantly giving us a problem. Well, the auditor is actually our cover. When an independent assessor, they sign off on something and something goes wrong, you can point to the audit and say that they told me that it was good. Now that protection layer is gone, and it's just you self-attesting that things are properly set up. And if someone on your own team believes that you misrepresented the security posture that you presented to the Department of War, that's a False Claims Act investigation and maybe even millions of dollars in fines. And it reminds me of Jared's seatbelt analogy and how true it is. If you look at something so simple like a seatbelt, people, they fought against the regulation of seatbelts for over a decade. And a lot of people said, I don't need it, I'm a good driver. Well, what happens, just like with CMMC, if the accident isn't actually your fault? You had every condition right, you were following the paths in the lane, but you still end up in a car accident. It doesn't matter at that point. You were part of a crash. So here's a tension that I want you to sit with. The Pentagon, they have not ruled out canceling third-party assessments altogether. They might not ever come back. So you have to ask yourself, who are my security controls for? Are my security controls for the auditor? Are they for the opportunity to win this contract? If so, you never had a security program. You had a theatrical performance that you put on every now and again to make things go your way. We are the practitioners. When the auditors, when they step back, you're still here. You're the standard. So ask yourself this week, would someone on your team, would they disagree with your own self-attestation, and why? I got to give a huge shout out and thank you to Jared and the Hypori team for making this episode happen. And as always, make sure that you are subscribed to the Hacker Valley Studio wherever you're listening or watching. And with that, we will see everyone next time.